So when I bought this car, I really bought it purely for its looks. And I said to myself, if this car drives good, that's just icing on the cake. Because I really think this car looks completely badass. Like if you were robbing a bank, this is probably the car that you would drive. Yeah, it's actually really dirty right now, so let's not focus too much on the cleanliness of it, but just look at these lines. Has to be one of the best looking sedans ever made. Yeah, I know this dates back to the 1987 XJ40 body, but I still think it looks great. And this being the X308 has enough modern updates to the taillights, bumpers, and grille that it just looks right. You know, I'm stopped by enough people in this car. My wife drives it, and she stopped by somebody just about every time she takes it out, that I think it's fair to say this car just looks fucking brilliant. So next we're gonna get in and we're gonna see what it's like to drive the Jag XJR. We are in the 2000 Jag XJR. I've owned this car about 2.5 years now, and I absolutely love it. I've owned the E39 M5. I've had a couple early 2000s AMG E55s. I think you could make a compelling case for owning any of these cars, but out of the three, I find this is the perfect combination of luxury and sport sedan. The E39 was a bit too much, especially if you drive it on a daily basis. You have, you know, that S62 400 horsepower V8 linked up to a 6-speed gearbox. It's gonna get you into trouble. I never got a ticket driving the car, but I always felt like I was always just on the wrong side of things going wrong. So I sold it, and the E55 was an okay luxury sedan. It was an okay sports sedan, but I didn't feel like it was really great at either one. You know, super, I mean, that car is really fast. It's probably the least expensive ownership proposition of the three, being the simplest, sturdiest, most reliable powertrain of all those cars. You know, not saying the S62 can't get big six-figure mileages on it, but it does require a heavy wallet to do it. And here, you know, when I bought this car, I didn't expect it to be the paragon of reliability, but I did address some things up front that are known issues for these cars. I did the fuel pumps. I did the little coolant lines that tend to crack and dump all your coolant out underneath the supercharger. I did shocks. I did the timing chains, fortunately, were already done when I bought the car. I did have it checked just to make sure that they were in fact the upgraded tensioners and that it wasn't falling apart and I wasn't about to be $10,000 poorer. But all of that was done, and I probably spent a grand total of, I don't know, $6,000. I'm actually going to do an upcoming episode where I detail ownership costs of this XJR. So has it been perfectly reliable? No. I've had 2 incidents where I've been in what Jaguar would call limp home mode. You have reduced power for the motor. It's still very drivable under part throttle. One was due to a bad ignition coil, and one was due to aging vacuum lines. So there were vacuum leaks on this motor that had triggered that malfunction. Again, neither one of them stranded me, but it did require a little bit of patience to have it diagnosed and fixed. So, I think you can own one of these as long as you have another car in your fleet that you can use as a backup. I've managed to put on over 30,000 miles in that 2.5 years of ownership, including a trip to South Carolina and back. They are just amazing highway machines. This car will gobble and gobble miles. And as you can see right now, with 370 horsepower on tap, it's incredibly easy to get up to speed and sail past most modern machinery. I say most because, of course, there's faster cars than this, but I never feel like I'm wanting for power. The low-end torque of the supercharged AJ V8 displacing 4 liters in this model is really impressive. That supercharger gives you torque just off idle. It can actually surprise quite a few people at a stoplight in this car if they don't know what's alongside of them, and many people don't. It just looks like an old Jaguar, a nice old Jaguar, but generally speaking, people have no idea of the performance that this car can offer. But what I really love about it is it's just a really nice place to spend time. You don't have to drive 10 tenths every time you get in this car to enjoy it. Some of the switchgear in the center stack is admittedly kind of cheap looking. I know this comes from an era when Ford owned Jaguar and was part of the PAG, the Premier Automotive Group. So I don't love this, but on the whole, the interior is a very pleasant place to spend time, and I feel like it's uniquely Jaguar. The broad swaths of wood across the dash, the inset gauges, the J-gate shifter, the kind of flat top on the dash here. These are all things that I feel contribute to the overall charm inside the cabin. It's not an incredibly roomy cabin, at least not for my 6'2" frame. I always feel like it's just a little bit on the snug side. The e-brake placement kind of sits right up against the underside of your right thigh. And there's not a ton of headroom in here either, but it's not uncomfortable. I would wish for a little bit more room, but I also feel like, the snugness of this cabin is what makes it cozy and inviting. And maybe that's just me having drunk the Kool-Aid, because I really, really do enjoy this car. There's a few little squeaks and rattles in here. I wouldn't say the build quality, at least not on this example, is anything outstanding, but it's not bad either. Right now, I've put it in sport mode, and that's one of the things about this car. There's a huge difference between sport mode and non-sport mode, at least in the power delivery and the way the transmission shifts. And it's just so easy to get up to extra legal speeds in a hurry. Yeah, that was fast. It's an engine that makes an abundance of torque down low, but also keeps making power right up until its 6,000 RPM redline. In sport mode, this is actually a Mercedes gearbox in this car. It's the same gearbox that Mercedes used in the E55 AMG from the early 2000s. 5-speed automatic. That's one of the other preventative maintenance items I did when I got this car. I flushed the transmission fluid, changed the filter on it. It is designed to be serviceable, but the gearbox in these cars, if you do the servicing, is pretty much bulletproof. The other thing you notice about this car is just how little body roll there is in corners. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable that for a 4,000 pound luxury car, you can throw it into a corner and there is very little body weight. So it's the overall fluidity of this chassis that surprises. The steering, while it's light, has tons of useful feedback, and it really does encourage you to at least dive into corners a little bit harder and explore the talents of this platform. I feel like Jaguar just did again, an excellent job of striking the perfect balance between luxury and sport. The ride isn't overly harsh, but there's enough balance and enough poise to really enjoy this car. We're heading into some fast sweepers here, and I don't need to slow down. It's just able to do it. That was a pretty good amount of speed into an off-camber turn, and the car, it just stayed very composed, and it felt, again, the steering loads up with useful feedback, and it manages to feel playful. I think where this car starts to lose its composure is when you're going 9 or 10 tenths. It's not going to be the E39 M5 competitor in that sense, but it's, again, for a daily driver, it's excellent. So, what do I actually think about longer-term ownership proposition of an XJR? I think you have to go into it eyes wide open. There's a lot of these cars on the market, and most of them can be had for $10,000 or less. So what is it that you're really getting? I mean, you could be getting a nightmare if you have tons of deferred maintenance, or you could be getting a super sedan bargain. So do your due diligence. I just think that at the end of the day, while a good E39 M5 is probably going to be, upwards of $30,000, the proposition of owning one of these for $10,000, say around $10,000, is hugely compelling. Even if you have to put $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 into it right off the bat to get it to where it needs to be, you're still miles ahead of the game. Now, do I think these have the appreciation potential of the E39 M5? That's a question that we could probably debate all day. Some might say that E39 M5s have already peaked in value. I don't think they have. But at the same time, I don't think these have peaked in value. I think there's a lot of people that haven't discovered what a bargain this car actually can be. So it wouldn't be an XJR YouTube video without at least one acceleration run from a dead stop. So consider this a little bit of a bonus, but I really do want you to feel the prowess of this car from a dead stop. Again, you have that instant supercharger thrust without having to wait for the power, without having to wait for the motor to come on cam. And you really never feel like you need more than 5 speeds in this car. It just does a really, really good job of managing the power that it has with the 5 gears. Yeah, 25 years later, this car has still got it. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. See you for the next one.